Many employers and employees have come to rely on personal protective equipment and clothing to protect them from particular hazards. But in fact, the hazard is still present, and unless the personal protective equipment or clothing is properly selected and fitted, cleaned and maintained, and its use is closely monitored, it will do little to provide proper protection from exposure to the hazard. PPE and clothing is, however, used in a wide variety of industries and can be effective where it is not practicable to eliminate or reduce the hazard using other methods. It can also be useful in providing protection in emergencies, cleanups, or when carrying out maintenance procedures. So what can you do to make PPE and clothing a more effective part of your health and safety program? Let's start by looking at the range and uses of PPE and clothing in our workplaces. Helmets are worn to protect our head from falling objects. Hats protect us from the harmful rays of the sun. Hoods protect us from hazardous chemicals or fumes. In noisy environments, a range of ear muffs and plugs protect us from suffering noise-induced hearing loss. Sunglasses reduce the effects of ultraviolet radiation and glare. Safety glasses protect our eyes from flying objects, dust, chemical splashes, or flashes from welding equipment. Gloves protect our hands from cuts and abrasions or from the effects of chemicals or water. Respirators and masks limit our exposure to dangerous substances or other airborne contaminants. Safety boots and shoes provide protection for our feet, and rubber boots may be needed when working with chemicals or water. The need for personal protective clothing can range from wearing a uniform or overalls to protect our own clothing, to jackets designed to keep out the cold or wet, and overalls, shirts and trousers to protect our skin from chemicals, sprays or sunlight. Aprons can prevent damage from chemical splashes or simply keep us clean. Whatever the sort of equipment or clothing we use, for it to effectively reduce our risk of injury and disease, it has to be the correct type for the particular job we're performing. For example, a mask that is suitable for protecting us from dust will not provide suitable protection when using hazardous chemicals. The same type of glove is not suitable protection against all types of chemicals. So how do we know which PPE to choose? There are Australian standards which specify the sorts of equipment and clothing that provide suitable protection for the particular task that you perform. These standards are a useful guide for employers when choosing PPE and ensure that the right equipment is purchased. Where recommended standards are not followed, the health and safety of employees can be placed at risk. Equally important is the fit of the equipment. Ill-fitting equipment or clothing may increase your risk of injury or disease. It's important that you're given training in how to fit the equipment correctly and that you follow these instructions carefully. In workplaces where PPE is used, a procedure for maintenance and cleaning should be in place. Protective equipment needs regular cleaning as well as maintenance, and you need to be trained in the procedures for this. In some instances, it may be inappropriate to launder protective clothing with the family wash. This is especially so where clothing has been worn when removing asbestos or handling hazardous materials. PPE that is shared can increase the risk of infections, so you need to have your own equipment and somewhere clean and dry to store it. Signs are often used in workplaces to indicate a particular area is designated as an area where PPE needs to be worn. Whether you work in that area or are just visiting, you need to be familiar with and comply with the signs. Remember, the wearing of PPE and clothing does not remove the hazard. You're putting your health and safety at risk if you ignore these signs. PPE and clothing that is fitted, maintained and worn correctly can reduce your risk of injury or illness. So it's important at the end of this video that you check the following. What PPE or clothing are you required to wear in your workplace? Why do you need to wear it? What training will you receive in regard to the fitting and cleaning of PPE and clothing? Where can it be stored? What procedures are there for maintenance and replacement? Are there signs around to indicate that a particular type of PPE needs to be worn? If you need further information on PPE, speak to your manager or supervisor.